Let's bring in just about the best guy in the world to talk about this. Are we lucky or what? Mansoor Mohi-uddin, who lives on airplanes, if he's not in Singapore, is in New York.
Tom,
it is wonderful to see you. I saw the central bank governor of Malaysia, Zedi Akhtar Aziz, in Singapore 4 or 5 years ago at an IMF meeting. Do you have a sense that this is an organized process, or is it a more chaotic process?
Well, I think clearly it's something that's caught people by surprise. And so now, as your previous speaker spoke, clearly there has to be a discussion amongst the major shareholders of the IMF. And then they have to come to a decision about which candidates they would like to put forward.
Is it Asia's moment, or do we go right back to Europe this, America this, Europe this, America this?
Yeah, it's too hard to say at this stage. I think there'll be plenty of candidates that are proposed, and then the markets will obviously want to see what their background is and what their credibility is.
Who decides this? I mean, this is like, it feels like a papal conspiracy or something. Who actually decides? Any history on that?
It will be the major shareholders of the IMF.
The U.S.,
the Europeans, and the several Asian countries as well.
Is China involved in that decision?
I think every major shareholder will definitely want to have a say in this.
Okay. Let's try to get back on script. Greece is blowing up. Let's look at the dollar first. Bring up a chart. What a day. It's down here, Mansoor, down here in the cheap seats so we keep the camera. Mohi-uddin considers dollar strength. I mean, you're calling for dollar strength at some point. That's a Martin Feldstein chart. It's just been weakening persistently. What will turn the dollar around?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's been weakening for the last 6 months or so because the Fed have been printing money, quantitative easing. Now, I'm very much of the view that when quantitative easing ends at the end of June, there'll be no additional flows of dollars coming out of the Federal Reserve. And I think that's been supporting risk assets, equities, commodities, emerging markets, carry trades. But once that flow of new dollars stops, then valuations will struggle to be supported. That's going to cause investors to turn more risk averse. And we know that dollar always benefits when investors become more risk averse.
What does it do to yen? What does it do to yen?
I would say that the dollar and the yen probably get supported in that environment, and perhaps the Swiss franc as well. While commodity currencies, emerging economies, the euro, the pound would definitely struggle in that environment.
You go back to Plaza Court in ancient history now in the 70s and into the 80s, and there's a game theory here. There's always something that comes out of nowhere. What keeps you up at night when you look at the certitudes that will have risk aversion, Swiss franc, Japanese yen, and dollar will do well? What's the thing that gives you pause?
Sure. I think definitely the fiscal situation in the US, what will happen in terms of the debt ceiling, that's one of these off left field events that investors really have to be concerned about. But there's no clarity on the situation. There probably won't be until the end of July. I think anyone who's bullish on the dollar does have to worry about whether Congress will be able to avert a standstill of the US government.
Let's look at Greece like we all do. Here's two charts back to back. Europe considers the market as the 10-year spread. Okay, German-Greece spread. And you can see it just goes up and up, really bursting out maybe to new record wide here any moment. And then bring up the next chart, which is a short-term space, 2-year spread. It's not as urgent, but look at that yield, Mansoor, over there between Greece and Germany, 23%, maybe 22% difference in yield. These are how can business get done in Athens with those kind of yields?
Yeah. So clearly what's happening is the market's voting with its feet. People aren't buying Greek government bonds. So the market is telling us that there will be a restructuring of Greece government bonds, and so buyers don't want to buy the paper even with these very, very high yields.
When do you suggest we will see this? Did you use the word reprofiling? Can we give you credit for it?
I didn't use the word reprofiling, no. It's a new word that's come out of Europe over the last few days. It seems clear that the Europeans, policymakers and the IMF will have a strong debate about whether Greece should try and go through a reprofiling or a restructuring, or whether new funds should be given first to Greece. The ECB is adamantly opposed to a restructuring.
Yes.
The French government has been opposed to a restructuring. The German government seems to be changing its view, and that's why it's come on to the debate now.
Would we see something over the weekend?
No, I think we have to wait until we get the IMF's latest review of Greece's programme, and that comes out the middle of June.
Now, those are bright economists, PhD economists, and operational people going into Greece from the IMF. Obviously, they're not changed in their tasks with this management upheaval at the IMF. Yet the IMF has changed, isn't it, as it directly discusses this with the Greek leadership?
Well, I think the technocrats who are in Athens will continue to be empowered, will continue to evaluate the programme.
Right.
But the decision about what happens on terms of restructuring, that has to be taken by all the parties involved. The European Union Commission, the European Central Bank, the national government leaders in the Eurozone, and the IMF as well.
What's your best trade right now? Because most people we talk to, it's like a blur out there right now.
Yeah, sure.
Is it a jumble out there?
It's a jumble, but I definitely like the dollar. I would definitely look to buy the dollar against a range of currencies.
A range. That means a range means a basket, like 5 or 6, right?
That's right. I would look to buy the dollar against the euro and the pound and the Japanese yen. Those are what we call the G4 currencies. If we're correct that the end of quantitative easing does lead to a repricing of the dollar, then it will do well against those 3 other G4 currencies.
Is the boom in Singapore, where you live, is the boom in Singapore different this time, or is it really a lot similar to 95, 96 before the crisis?
It's very different. What's driving the Singapore economy is 2 major events. Firstly,
one is your airline bill.
One is my airline bill, definitely. Yeah. There's clearly a tremendous amount of money that's coming to Singapore at the moment. And a lot of that is because Singapore is developing itself as a financial institution, financial centre, which it didn't from 95 to 97 as much. The second thing that's driving the Singapore economy, surprisingly, is the casinos. The casinos have been a huge success.
The casinos?
The casinos. They've been a huge success.
I did not know this. There's casinos.
2 casinos opened, I believe, last year. They have been wildly successful, and that is pushing up economic development. That's
great. I did not know. I got to study this now. Mansoor, thank you so much. Mansoor Mohi-uddin, head of foreign exchange at award-winning UBS.